Welcome to another installation of Profiles in Excellence, where Homeland Security Today introduces you to the numerous winners of the Homeland Security Today Hero Awards. Today, we have the pleasure of talking with Sean Haglund, who is the leader of the Office of Bombing Prevention, that's part of the Department of Homeland Security's Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA. Or CISA, depending on who you are and what acronym you know. So we're very, very pleased to have you with us today.
Christina, thank you so much for having me today, and also just for the recognition associated with the awards. We're very proud of the work that the office has done over the past year. If I could, I'll just say a little bit about kind of my background and how I got to this place. Sure. I take this mission very personally, and basically I enlisted in the Air Force when I was 18 years old. I went to the Naval Explosive Ordnance Disposal School and became a bomb technician in the Air Force. I deployed to Desert Storm in Saudi Arabia during the first Gulf War. And then as an enlisted bomb technician back in the United States, I had an opportunity to respond to IED incidents, bomb making materials incidents, and a range of military ordnance calls during that time. I was commissioned in the Air Force as an officer about 6 years later. And then I had the opportunity to serve in command of several large explosive ordnance disposal units across the Air Force. And so during that time, I deployed into combat twice, both times into Iraq. And certainly during that time, it was routine to respond to numerous improvised explosive devices on a daily basis, as well as post-blast scenes where schools, mosques, other public gathering places had been hit with an IED and created mass casualty situations and damage to infrastructure. And so following that, I went to the U.S. Central Command staff as the EOD program manager for Iraq and Afghanistan to provide policy and strategic oversight for our bomb disposal operations in those theaters. Following my time with the CENTCOM staff, I went to the Naval Postgraduate School, graduated there in their Homeland Security and Defense program, and then moved over to the Defense Threat Reduction Agency, where I participated in standing up a building partnership capacity program with partner nations to prepare them for countering weapons of mass destruction. And so during my time there, I also had the opportunity to teach at the Marshall Center in Garmisch, Germany, the Countering Weapons of Mass Destruction Terrorism course and the seminar on transatlantic civil security. And that was really an interesting opportunity to connect with a lot of international colleagues and learn their best practices and approaches to the problem. So after that, I became a squadron commander, and that's where I finished out my 24 years in the Air Force. At that point, I transitioned back to government life as a civilian at the Pentagon, where I joined the Joint Staff in developing non-material solutions to counter chemical, biological, and radiological threats against our domestic targets potentially and our allies. And so it was in 2017 that I had the opportunity to join the team here at DHS and CISA, as you introduced there. And so I've been with the Office for Bombing Prevention since that time in 2017. And then I'll just conclude with, again, I take this mission very, very personally. I lost many colleagues and friends during my time as a bomb technician. I saw firsthand the consequences of these explosives attacks on a variety of targets. And so it is something that I take very personally.
I can understand that. It's sad that we have to kind of have you in the arsenal for the United States. You know, to see this kind of thing come here is really scary and unfortunate. And so your office has actually done tremendous work on outreach with law enforcement, civilians, on bombing prevention, and certainly understanding the signs. But you in particular won an award with us because of your work with historically Black colleges and universities. I think many of our readers may remember that there was a huge spike in bomb threats targeting HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities, and you really spearheaded the effort to address those threats. Could you tell us a little more about that?
Certainly. So the Office for Bombing Prevention has kind of a twofold mission. We do lead DHS efforts to implement the national policy for countering improvised explosive devices. And then more specifically, we also provide a range of resources to reduce risk in the prevention, protection against, mitigation, and response to the use of explosives against critical infrastructure, private sector, federal, state, local, and tribal and territorial entities. And so the HBCU case that we saw start towards the end of January of last year, it was actually the last day of January, just prior to the start of Black History Month. We saw, as you mentioned, a huge spike in electronically communicated bomb threats against historically Black colleges and universities across the U.S. And so initially in that February to March timeframe, we saw more than 30 of the HBCUs targeted, of the 101 HBCUs targeted with those threats, some of them even receiving multiple threats in a single day. And so really, while OBP played a critical role, it became a whole of CISA endeavor to try and leverage a wide range of resources to help mitigate the impacts of those threats. And so the agency quickly convened a body that included our regional staff as well as OBP. We provided information on how the threats were being communicated, what those threats look like, how to assess the credibility of those threats, and then developed a strategy to engage all 101 HBCUs as quickly as possible to deliver the resources that not only OBP provides, but other portions of the agency as well. And so that unfolded very quickly. All 101 HBCUs were contacted. Over half of them responded that they were interested in taking advantage of the training and information resources that OBP could provide. And so that's where we focused our effort moving forward. Now, I'll just quickly make a note that people think of a bomb threat as not really having an impact like you would think of in terms of an actual bombing. And that's not actually the case. We saw the operational impacts of having to evacuate schools, shelter in place, shut down classes, financial impacts associated with that, and certainly a very real psychological impact to the students, the faculties, of having to wonder, is there a bomb on my campus near my classroom or in my classroom? And so there are real effects, real consequences to even bomb threats. And so the office really focused a tremendous amount of attention in delivering these resources as quickly as possible. One particular engagement I'll highlight was through our training and engagement branch down in Atlanta. They were able to host a bomb threat forum that was hosted by the Atlanta University Center Consortium. It's the oldest and largest consortium of historically Black colleges and universities. And not only did they have an in-person attendance, they were able to virtually broadcast that to a wide audience across the U.S. to start to deliver more information on what the bomb threats look like, but also all the resources that were available to quickly assess the credibility of those threats and try and mitigate the consequences and return to normal as quickly as possible in the event that one of these colleges had received an actual threat. And so I had the opportunity to testify before the U.S. House Committee on Oversight and Reform and really kind of provide congressional staff with a full depiction of what those resources look like and how we were quickly leveraging those resources to address this threat specifically. And so through the course of those several months, we were able to deliver dozens of courses to thousands of not only students, but staff members, campus security professionals, and really started to, I think, address an identified capability gap there. One interesting aspect of that was in our engagement with the Atlanta University Center Consortium and the students there was we also have to look forward to how do we best deliver our message to the next generation. And so our training team is working with Morehouse College right now to deliver a short training segment that's specifically tailored to the students to help them get a better understanding of what the threat looks like, how to better connect them with additional resources. But you do need to address that next generation in kind of a unique way. And so that was one very important lesson learned through that. But really, in responding to that HBCU threat, we leveraged a range of resources across the office. And I will just highlight the training and awareness efforts as one particular avenue where we engaged with those universities. We delivered training to about 18,000 people last year, and one particular milestone we went over was we trained our 150,000th student last year. So really having a tremendous impact that way. We do provide training through different modalities, and that includes online, web-based training, virtual instructor-led training through a webinar-based platform, and then in-person training. And now we're looking at other modalities too, perhaps through virtual reality type simulations and things like that. And so the training program has been a huge success through those different modalities. Those trainings are all offered at no cost and are accessible through the CISA.gov website. And so really a lot to be proud of there, I think, from the office-wide perspective. And then kind of a uniquely related program is our bomb making materials awareness program and our partnership with the FBI through Operation Flashpoint. And this is a program where we kind of try and start to get ahead of the threat of an actual bombing. And this program allows us to engage with point of sale retail locations to help give them information on how to recognize suspicious purchasing patterns or behaviors and report those, so that if people are purchasing combinations or quantities of chemicals or displaying suspicious purchasing patterns, that we can identify that much earlier than when a device is actually at a target. And so that program was fielded nationally last year, engaged with thousands of point of sale retail locations, and we're excited to continue to move that partnership forward with our FBI partners.
Yes, they won an award as well. So we'll
Fantastic.
be them in greater detail in an interview like this one. But yes, that was an incredible effort. We were really happy to see such national outreach. But it's very sad to see that these types of threats happen here in the US. Did you have any idea where those threats originated? And just to be clear, none of those threats materialized into a bomb on campus, correct?
So the second part of your question, that is correct. No actual devices were ever located in association with those threats. So that's certainly something that we can take into account when we're looking at mass bomb threats and how do you assess the credibility of those threats. We can look at kind of the historical significance of those threats and how we can, relate that to our training and awareness products as we move forward. Your first question in terms of where those threats originated, that's really a better question for our law enforcement counterparts. They do that investigative aspect of it. And so our FBI counterparts, the local and state law enforcement that we work for, they really kind of pursue that line of effort. And certainly it is a whole of government effort in the counter ID space. But I would say they're probably best to ask that question too.
All right. Nice dodge. So when you were, it's obvious that the HBCUs were very cooperative, and you really were ready for this because of all the resources that your office has been developing over time, especially in the last 5 years. You've really done a lot more outreach, a lot of training, a lot of online training for people. But what was the greatest challenge you faced when you got the actual threats and had to reach out?
So I think one of the greatest challenges that we often see is just building and sustaining momentum. And this is not only specific to the HBCU threat, but also just any of our programs that we try and scale to a national level. And if you think about historically the high visibility, high consequence mass casualty bombings that we've seen in the U.S., Oklahoma City, the Boston Marathon, the World Trade Center bombing. They're not something that happen on a frequent basis, but it is an enduring threat. We do see these mass casualty, large profile bombing events occur. And so One challenge that we find is just how do you maintain that level of awareness and that level of focus on something when it does happen relatively infrequently, at least those major events. That really is why this office was stood up, to try and prevent. And so I would say that's one of the biggest challenges, is just conveying to people that this is an enduring threat, and just maintaining that base level of awareness across the general public, and then more focused resources as you move into specific types of critical infrastructure or special events. That's probably the biggest challenge and the most enduring challenge that we face, is just that heightened level of awareness.
It's very difficult with all the threats, because we talk about cyber threats a lot, but terrorists, many bad actors and terrorists are really not looking for economic damage. They're looking for bodies. And so I think that's where we can't lose focus on the physical threats that face critical infrastructure. We're seeing this year, and last year, renewed focus on attacking critical infrastructure. So that physical aspect is very important. So you seem very poised and ready to do that. Was there anything that was easy or surprisingly easy on this project?
So everything we do is on a voluntary basis. And so our partnerships, our relationships with our stakeholders are absolutely critical. But maybe the easiest part of what we do is building our coalitions of the willing. I don't think what we do is controversial at all. Everybody can generally agree that bombs are bad. So we don't have to navigate any challenging areas that way. I think, once we get to that point where we agree, hey, these are bad events, we don't want them to happen. How do we best tailor these resources to meet your specific needs, your specific resources and capacity? That's where we see our biggest success, I think, is just people understand that they'll offer as much as they can, because nobody wants these types of events to happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what's next for securing the nation's posture around bombing prevention? You all have done a tremendous amount with law enforcement, the public, as you said, with the FBI. So what is your next big goal for 2023?
So I think there's a couple areas where we're really going to lean forward. One, we do want to better engage generally with the public and just heighten that level of awareness of what the threat looks like. And there's a couple areas we'll reinforce there, that there's a reality that the instructions on how to build bombs are widely available on the internet. They're shared across different social media platforms. So the instructional material is there. In terms of the bomb making materials and the explosive precursor chemicals, again, that's why that bomb making materials awareness program and Flashpoint was stood up, is because literally you can go to a pool supply store, a beauty supply store, a hardware store, even a grocery store, and buy everything you need to build a very effective bomb. So you've got the instructions, you've got the materials, and then you've got such a broad array of ideologies: foreign terrorist organizations, domestic violent extremists, racially motivated violent extremists, wide range of ideologies that could pursue using a bomb. And we've got a lot of vulnerable critical infrastructure across the US. And I'll just highlight quickly the Christmas Day bombing in Nashville just a couple of years ago. We saw that outside of a telecommunications hub. When that bomb went off, thankfully, the bomber was the only one that was killed because of the timing and the location of the device. But it did create cascading effects through our critical infrastructure, knocking out communications, air traffic control centers, because of the importance of that communications node. And so we want to, first off this year, better communicate that the threat is real, it exists, and that there are certain vulnerabilities in our critical infrastructure. We've got a new element, kind of an architecture of how we deliver our resources, known as technical assistance. And basically that looks across all the different resources that we have in the office to build tailored packages to a university, to a special event, to a specific type of critical infrastructure. And so I think the technical assistance approach is going to be a very efficient way for us to address very specific needs of our stakeholders. As I mentioned, we want to continue to expand the reach of our training program. One huge success there has been our Empowered Train the Trainer initiative. We have partnerships with federal, state, local, and private sector organizations now in 39 states and territories, where they have gone through our Empowered Trainer course, become certified OBP instructors, and now they're delivering our courses across the US, and that's a huge force multiplier, and it certainly expands our ability to connect with stakeholders more broadly. More modalities, artificial intelligence, how do we connect with the next generation? How do we spread the word more broadly? All of this starts with good general public awareness. If you see something, say something. And so from there, through that technical assistance program, we can deliver more specific resources as needed. And certainly the last area I'll mention is continuing to develop our partnership with the FBI, Department of Defense, ATF, Department of State. We have fantastic partnerships both within the federal government and our private sector partners, and those are truly invaluable. And so continuing to build those partnerships so we can stay ahead of emerging threats is another area where we're going to devote a lot of attention over the next year.
So if you had to argue to a member of the public why they should be aware and engaged, what argument would you make?
My argument would be that the threat is real, and you don't see it every day, but we on an annual basis see thousands, tens of thousands of explosive related incidents. And what we don't want to do is become complacent. You can easily reach out, for instance, to the CISA.gov website or very short informational YouTube videos, and just maintain that basic level of awareness, understand what suspicious activities look like and how to report those. And that's really the important part there, is that we engage the general public and then provide those tailored resources when needed for critical infrastructure and special events.
Excellent. Yes. I mean, I remember working for the American Public Works Association and having a public works person finding explosive devices in planters near the town hall building. And so your job, and even just being a student or whatever, to be able to recognize those things can really save lives.
Absolutely.
So awesome. Do you have any last words of wisdom for us? Because we just want to congratulate you again on your tremendous work. And we want to keep magnifying your message, because the terrorists have called for independent people to just develop things on their own, use a knife, use a hatchet, use whatever you have to wreak havoc and to do harm. So it's really good that our level of awareness across the country is increased, and we want to play a role in that. So what do we do, sir?
I think one important part to note here is, while you mentioned, edged weapons, vehicle ramming, active shooter, there are so many different threats out there. One unique aspect to these bombings are they're not spontaneous. There is an attack cycle associated with a bomb that extends over typically 12 to 18 months, where you're gathering materials, where you're experimenting with building a bomb, you're surveilling a target. That gives us a window to apply these resources, to identify suspicious patterns, behaviors, and make a difference before the bomb is at the target. And so if I have to leave you with one thing, it would be just don't be complacent. And if you see something, say something. And thank you again so much for the award and the recognition and the emphasis on this threat area.
Oh, of course, it is very deserved. And again, thank you for your work for the nation, for your entire career, because you've been working on behalf of the U.S. for a long, long time and doing a tremendous job. And we thank you for that. And we'll certainly follow up to do a webinar for our law enforcement colleagues on the bombing cycle. And certainly if we can do that for the public, we'd be happy to partner with you on that. So thank you all. Your office is tremendous. You've been doing some great training. And again, you can go to CISA DHS CISA online. If you just put that in Google, you can pull up tremendous resources on YouTube and other places where they are showing you exactly what the threat is, educating you and informing you as much as you'd like to be informed. So we hope you will take an opportunity to do that. And again, congratulations and thank you to you, sir. Thank you for your service, and we look forward to working with you throughout the year.
Thank you, Christina.